Hello and welcome to the Data Management EcoCast event. We've got an exciting event lined up for you today. On today's event, you'll be hearing from Western Digital with Komprise. You'll hear from Igneous, Veeam with VMware, and Infinite IO. It's going to be a really great show. My name is David Davis at ActualTech Media, and I'll be your moderator for today. We at ActualTech Media created the MegaCast and EcoCast event series to help educate the world of IT professionals about the most innovative enterprise-grade technology solutions that are available to you today, to help you to do it as efficiently as possible and to do it all in one place without ever having to leave your home or office. Thank you so much for joining us on today's event. And the cool thing about today's event is while you're learning about innovative enterprise tech, you have a chance to win one of our very cool prizes, which I'll be talking about in just a moment. Now, the format for today's event is each presenter will come on and speak for roughly 20 minutes, followed by a live 3 to 5 minute Q&A session where I'll ask the best questions from you out there in the audience. So use that Q&A box or that panel there on your audience console to ask all of the best questions you have about data management. So this event, I want to point out, is not a competition between the presenters. There's no winner being selected here today. The EcoCast is an educational event for you, our audience. So to help you ensure that it remains positive, we've asked each of the presenters to focus only on their solution and what makes their product unique, what makes their product, the solution to all of your data management problems. All right, so on today's event, we have prizes. We have 3 Amazon $500 gift cards to give away. I'll be talking about the requirements to be eligible for those prize drawings here in just a couple of minutes. We have questions from you, our audience, I hope. I hope there's a lot of questions coming in. I see a lot of people saying hello, good morning, things like that. So thank you. I'll be releasing those questions out into the wild for everyone in just a moment. But we want your technical questions as well. So as you hear presenters talking about their enterprise tech solutions and how they're going to help you, ask us your toughest questions, and I'll be posing those to the presenters at the end of their Q&A session. I also have a number of poll questions for you out there in the audience. I want to get your feedback. What are your data management challenges? So I'll be asking you some poll questions, and you answer those poll questions right in the slides area. So you'll be seeing those here in just a moment. We also want this to be a social event. We encourage you to promote the event. The hashtag for the event today is DataEcoCast, and I'll be monitoring Twitter throughout the event and probably retweeting and following just about anyone who's talking about the event. And then we have resources for you. We have a handouts tab. It's just to the right of the questions and answers box there on your console. If you click on the word handouts, you'll see a number of handouts, one from each of today's presenters. In some cases, there's a link there that'll take you to their website, but in most cases, it's a PDF. If you click on that, you can download that PDF. You can view it, share it, whatever you'd like to do. Now, I do want to point out that on your audience console there in your web browser, this is kind of like a windowed operating system. So you can take the slides window and the Q&A window, you can drag those around, you can resize them, you can maximize them, and I encourage you to do that to view as much detail in the presentations today, any screen shares or videos, things like that, architectural diagrams that you might want to see. If you have trouble at any point in the presentation, if you can't hear me, if you can't see the presentation, I encourage you to press refresh on your web browser, and 9 times out of 10, that will resolve any technical problems. If it doesn't, I encourage you to try a different web browser. Chrome is usually works very well, but when some people have trouble with Chrome due to ad blockers, pop-up blockers, things like that, you can just take the URL from the audience console there and paste it into an incognito or private browsing window. And 99% of the time, that will resolve any trouble. So I mentioned prizes. Today we have 3 Amazon $500 gift cards. When it comes to being eligible for those prize drawings, we do those throughout the event based on those who are live on the event. So I'm sorry if you're watching this event Afterwards, on demand, the recorded version of it, the prize drawings have already occurred. I should mention that. Winners do have the option to make their prize drawing equivalent value to a selected charity. And throughout the event, throughout the MegaCast and MegaCast and EcoCast event series, we've given away thousands of dollars to the charities that you see on the screen, thanks to generous attendees who win prizes and say, you know what, I'd just like to donate that prize value to one of the charities to help someone less fortunate. So we'd be glad to help you to do that. If you've won more than $600 from us within the calendar year, we have a requirement from the U.S. Internal Revenue Service to have you submit an IRS Form W-9. Now, the prize legalese, terms and conditions are in your handouts tab. If you click on ATM prize terms, that'll take you to our website where you can view all the legal requirements to be eligible for the prize drawings. Now, I mentioned that I want this to be a social event. Looks like I've got the hashtag wrong up there. Sorry about that. The hashtag for today is Data EcoCast. You can follow ActualTech Media. We are on Twitter at ActualTech Media. And then you can, of course, always follow me. I am David M. Davis on Twitter as well. You can subscribe to all the ActualTech Media social channels, YouTube, Facebook, and we also have a really nice podcast over in the iTunes store called the 10 on Tech podcast. If you want to subscribe to that, check it out and hear some of the greatest interviews with enterprise tech innovators in the industry today. Now, today's topic is data management. And I mean, when I go out to Wikipedia or go out to the internet and look up data management, if you do this yourself, you'll find that data management encompasses a very wide variety of topics, right? There's data governance, architecture, data modeling and design, database and storage management, data security, data integration, documents, consent, things like that, data warehousing, business intelligence, metadata management, and data quality. So there's a lot that this topic of data management covers. So when you agree to attend this event today, you might be wondering, well, what are we going to learn about today exactly when it comes to data management? So on today's event, the focus here, you'll hear about data growth analytics, so how to analyze your data as it's going. And I think that most everyone on the event today, if you're like me, has a data growth problem, right? You have too many photos, videos, databases, files, email. It's all growing, at massively increasing rates, too much for us to handle and store and analyze. And so you'll hear about some very unique tools for analyzing your data as it grows. You'll hear about large-scale data management platforms, for example, like those from Western Digital, to help you to analyze, to help you to store this massively growing data and to access that data with sufficient performance and to keep that data highly available. You'll hear about unstructured data management as a service, so how you can store your data in cloud offerings and how to access that data, over the internet and manage that data in the most efficient way. You'll hear about the 5 stages of intelligent data management, and you'll also hear about hybrid cloud storage for data management. So we have some really cool topics that I think that you're going to be interested in, and I've seen all the presentations, and I can tell you, I think there's going to be some very helpful stuff for IT professionals out there today. So before we jump into it with the first presentation, I've got a few warm-up poll questions. The first one that's on the screen right now is how many people work at your company? And you can just select the answer right in the slides area, and I'll be sharing the results of these poll questions with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers who are on the event today if you're interested in that. So, I've got a couple demographic questions, and then I've got a question here about your data management challenges, which I'm very curious to hear, what your greatest data management challenges are. So while you're answering those questions, I'm going to be approving the many comments that have come in, and I thank you everyone for your comments. So you'll start to see a lot more comments popping up there in the attendee view. All right, looks like most everyone has responded to that poll question. Let me share the results of that with you. And looks like we have a real good distribution of, all different sizes of companies on the event today. So 19% of the attendees on the event today come from companies that are 100 to 500. And then from there, it goes down to 14% who come from 10,000 plus very large enterprises, 13% 1,000 to 2,500, and then a good distribution of all different size companies after that. So here's another poll question for you. This one is, what's your industry vertical? And you may need to scroll down because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of different industry verticals to choose from. And I'm interested to see what verticals are represented on today's data management EcoCast. So let me give you a few minutes to answer that question as well. All right, let's take a look at this. So 26% are from technology companies, but from there it goes down to like 11% manufacturing. Very cool. Thank you, manufacturing, for being represented on the event today. 9% healthcare. If you add up the K-12, local government, state, federal, higher education, that's a good percentage of SLED organizations, as they call them, state, local, education organizations on the event. Let's see, who else? 4% retail, 3% transportation, 8% other, 5% telecom, 5% finance and banking. So thank you, everyone who voted in that poll question. All right, looks like we've got another poll question here. This is the last one before I introduce you to the first presenter on today's event. So this poll question on the screen is, which of these are your greatest data management concerns? And the tough part about this question is you have to pick one. I know it says concerns, but it actually should say concern, I suppose, because you need to just select one of the answers on the screen there. So I'm curious to find out. I mean, I know we're struggling with all of these different things, right? Scalability, capacity, visibility, throughput, performance, security, the high cost of data storage, and then availability and data protection. But which one of these is your greatest concern? So let me leave that poll question up there for you. Is, what's your greatest data management concern? Or what do you want to learn on this event? I guess that would be a better question. What do you want to learn from today's data management EcoCast? What's the problem you're having? And what kind of solutions do you think might help you with that problem? What do you want to learn on today's event? Just post that in the questions and answers box right there. And I'll be sharing those with everyone. I'm curious to hear the results of that myself. All right, let me share the results of this poll question with you. And take a look at that. 47% said security and compliance is their greatest data management concern. And from there, it drops to capacity and scalability. And it's kind of a close tie between capacity and scalability, the high cost of data storage, and throughput and performance. So that's some very good insight. I appreciate everyone who answered that poll question. I also appreciate all the comments that are coming in right now. Richard says he wants to learn about data management, fast search, fast retrieval. Dean wants to learn about the best solutions for growth. Micah wants to learn about budgeting and how we get a buy-off for data management solutions, how to use data backup. Let's see, Perry wants to learn about tools. As a consultant, he wants to help improve clients' data management. Jason wants to learn about managing compliance and availability for file servers that have hundreds of millions of small files. So very good insight. Thank you, everyone who responded to that poll and all the good feedback we just got in the Q&A box. That's going to be very helpful to our presenters today. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Kurt Esser. He is the Director of Data Protection and Cloud Solutions at Western Digital. And he's joined by Krishnan, who is the COO of Komprise. Kurt and Krishna, are you with us?
Yes.
Yes,
we're here. Thank you.
Thanks for being on the event today. Take it away.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for taking time out of your busy day. This is Kurt. I'm here with Krishna. So today we have very interesting technology between Western Digital and Komprise. So we have a handful of slides. I'm going to let Krishna kick it off, and we're just going to kind of go back and forth, and then hopefully by the end we'll be able to field some of your questions. So at this point, Krishna, why don't you take it away?
Perfect. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you all for joining us. Your survey results were very interesting. I think many organizations, just like yourself, are dealing with a lot of data growth and are interested in better ways to manage data. And the interesting thing is that most of the data that businesses are storing today is what you might call unstructured data. So it's data that is mostly being stored as files today, and in the future, companies are looking at things like object storage to store that data. But what's really amazing is the pace at which this data is growing. Just about 3 years ago, analysts like IDC were saying that we're going to be generating 44 zettabytes of data by 2020. And 44 zettabytes sounded like a really big number. But just this year, the same analyst firm updated their projections, and now they're saying we're going to generate 163 zettabytes of data by 2025. That's 4 times more than a staggering amount that they're already projected that we thought was too big. So data is just growing at an astronomical pace. And as most of you probably know, a zettabyte is 1 million petabytes, and a petabyte is already a pretty big number. So there's all this data that we're generating, whether it's genomics or self-driving cars, or in the public sector, in government, or in research, or in financial services. And as many of you pointed out in the survey, storing this data, making sure it's secure, making sure it's protected, making sure it's accessible to users is a big concern for IT, but also with so much data sitting around and IT budgets staying flat, another question that a lot of customers are asking is, how can we do more with the same? How can we take the same budget that we have and stretch it to now handle double or triple or 4 times that amount of data? And that's really the problem that Western Digital and Komprise are addressing with our data management solution. And so let's talk about how we actually do that. The interesting thing is that even though we have all this data that we're generating, a lot of that data becomes cold and barely ever accessed very quickly. So in most industries, here we're showing you industry by industry what's happening. I saw in the poll that a lot of you were in healthcare. So healthcare organizations, for example, on average, 82% of their data hasn't been touched in a year or more. So within a year, 82% of the data that you're storing and backing up is data that's never changing and never getting accessed. And yet, it's sitting on expensive storage, it's getting replicated on expensive storage, and then it's getting 2 or 3 backup copies. And all of that extra footprint can be cut out if you just took that cold data and managed it on a cost-efficient storage like the one that Western Digital has, and your users still see it like it's on the original network-attached storage, but you've now cut out 70% of your costs. And that's really the solution that Komprise and Western Digital offer you. We provide you a simple way to find your cold data and to eliminate cold data from expensive storage, expensive backups, and expensive DR, but do it in a way that's transparent to your users and in a way that all your security, all your compliance, all your data protection, all those remain intact, but at a fraction of the cost. And what better way to show this to you than with an actual customer example? So I'm going to ask Kurt to talk about how Western Digital is actually using Komprise and WD ActiveScale in their own environment.
Sure. Thank you, Krishna. Oh, we skipped the slide. Let me go back. Here we go. Yeah, so no, that's a great segue. So our Western Digital's internal IT department, as you can imagine, we collect data globally from factories in Asia, our developers. So we have very, very large NAS footprint. And what was going on is the NAS footprint, as you can all imagine, was growing at excessive rates, but they also came to the point where they were hitting a large refresh cycle. So of the 40 plus NAS filers that they had in place, more than half of them were coming up for renewal. So what we did is, in partnership with Komprise, was say, well, instead of just throwing more money at it, how can we be more intelligent about understanding our data? So we brought Komprise in and ran their software against our environment and discovered that, like Krishna said earlier, over 80% of our data hadn't been touched in a year. And a lot of it was, even year, 2 years. So what we did was we were able to bring in ActiveScale, which is our scale-out cloud object storage platform, and basically take that data and migrate it off of our expensive NAS filers and put it to ActiveScale. The beauty of it is, from an end user perspective, from the end user just accessing basic files, or the developers accessing their code base and things, they had no idea that it's moved, because the data is transparently moved via Komprise. So by doing this, we were able to save significant amount of money, increase performance on the NAS filers, because we were able to, quote unquote, unclog them or free up a lot of the space. But and then by doing this homogeneous solution with Komprise, it just worked seamlessly across. And that was kind of for our IT department, opened their eyes, is, wow, this is really a really compelling solution, because, like you said, at the end of the day, the end users have no idea where the data is. The performance was still there, the accessibility was still there. We were just able to free up a bunch of capacity on our existing NAS systems. So it's great to talk about all this. So I think the next thing we'll do is we'll let Krishna give a quick high-level demo of the Komprise solution, and it'll kind of show you what it does, and it's actually pretty slick. So at this point, Krishna, do you want to start into your next section?
Yes, absolutely. So why don't we go into a live demo and show you actually what the product looks like. I hope the demo will actually come up in a second here. You should be seeing my screen now. So we're going to show you how easy it is for you to understand data in your own environment and figure out how much you can save with Western Digital and Komprise. And so this is a live demo. And what I've done is I've taken the Komprise software. It's just a virtual machine. I've powered it on. And the minute I power it on, I'm brought into this console. The first thing I'm going to do is connect this to my network attached storage. So this is any storage I have in my environment that can be accessed via NFS or SMB. So in this example, you can see that I'm connected to some NetApp 7 mode filers. I'm connected to some EMC Isilon. I'm connected to some NetApp cluster mode filers. And I'm connected to some Windows file servers. So literally, any storage you have that has NFS or SMB access is storage that Komprise and Western Digital can work with. And it's really simple. You don't have to make any changes to your storage. You just point Komprise at your storage IP address and give it credentials similar to a backup admin. And then Komprise finds all the shares and exports on that storage. You pick the ones that you're interested in, and once you do that, you're going to start getting visibility. I noticed that in the survey today, many of you said security and compliance was a big issue for you, and right after that, the capacity, and storage costs and visibility were the next 3 issues. This is very similar to what we hear from every single customer. Most customers are making critical storage decisions in the dark. So Komprise gives you a view of all your data so IT can better understand how your business is consuming the storage that you're provisioning for them. So for example, here we can see that we have 195 terabytes of data on the storage that I just pointed Komprise at. I can also see that a good amount of this data, in this case, 25 plus another 25, about 50% plus of the data hasn't been touched in a year or more. So that's the cold data that we don't want sitting on expensive storage, and we don't want that data to be replicated and backed up because it's costing us a lot of money. We can also see that our data is growing pretty fast. In fact, 45% data growth in this environment. So if I did nothing, this 195 terabytes is going to become 284 terabytes. So I'm going to have to buy more storage capacity. We can also get a good sense of what kind of data we have. In this case, there's a lot of video files, but you can see, what are your business users doing? What kinds of data are they storing? Is it big files or small files? Who is actually actively using your storage? Which users? Which groups? Where is the data sitting? All kinds of information that helps you better plan your storage strategy. But it's not just that. You can now start setting policies. So remember we said, hey, there's about 50% plus cold data in this environment. Well, maybe in our remote offices, anything that hasn't been touched in over 6 months, maybe we want to move it to the WD ActiveScale solution because we know ActiveScale is less than 30% of the cost of what we're currently paying for on this data. So let's say I set that policy and I pick ActiveScale as my target. As soon as I set that, Komprise is showing me that now 65% of my data will actually get moved out based on this policy, and it's going to free up about 186 terabytes on my main storage. But more importantly, 3 times that amount is going to be reduced on the backup and DR, and here's my cost savings. So you can go to your management and you can actually show them how much you're going to save as you're transforming data management at your business. So all of this data you can generate as a report, and you can actually go and have a business conversation with your CFO or CIO and show them this information. But it's not just that. Once you've set all your policies, all you need to do is activate. And when you activate, Komprise actually starts moving the data to Western Digital based on your policies. And so at this point, I'm actually going to go back to the presentation and show you what that experience looks like. So once you start moving data based on the policies, Komprise then what it does is it takes the data that is sitting as files on that network attached storage and it moves it into WD ActiveScale. But the way it moves it is that the data looks like it's still on your original storage. So when your users go to your NetApp or your Isilon or Windows Server, they will still see the files that are now sitting on ActiveScale, and they look like they're still on the original storage, but now the difference is that the file is a link. And the beauty of the way Komprise does this is all the access control, all the security on that data is fully intact. So if Joe was not supposed to see a file, then even when the file is on ActiveScale, Joe won't be able to see it. So it's completely transparent. All the security is preserved. There's no proprietary agent that we had to put on any of your storage. It's all using standard protocols, and there is no lock-in to any environment. So you don't have to stick something on your network that's going to sniff all your storage. You don't have to put a new appliance in your environment that now controls all access to your data. You're not doing any of that. Your data is still sitting on your different storage exactly as you wanted it. So there's now some data on your NAS, some data on ActiveScale. It's all transparently accessed, but you can access that data from either your NAS or ActiveScale completely on your own using standard protocols like NFS, SMB, and S3. So there's native access to data from everywhere. So there's no lock-in with this joint solution. And the best part is that you can actually save 70% or more of your costs. And to show you how the ActiveScale piece of this works, I'm going to ask Kurt now to talk to you about the ActiveScale technology.
Thank you, Krishna. Let's Krishna, can you advance to the next slide, please? It doesn't look like it's there. You go. Thank you. So, no, that's a great overview once again. And so now what we'll do is, without going too deep in the weeds, but just kind of give you an overview of the ActiveScale family from Western Digital. So we have two systems. I call it the big brother and the little brother. So the P100 system, once again, they're both these systems. It's the same operating system. It's the same, depending if you're managing 800 terabytes or 200 petabytes. It's the same operating system in the same single pane of glass. What this does, the ActiveScale system, as you can see, it's extremely dense and has extremely high capacities. What it also does is, since we manufacture the entire stack, we own the software, we own the hard drives, we manufacture the entire stack, so we get very, very good economics in terms of price per terabyte. We also have extremely high performance for an object storage. As you, not knowing how much you know about object storage, but generally object storage, it really is more an archive tier, and you're not going to be running your SAP, your Oracle, your VMware environments directly on object storage. That'll still be for the NAS environments. But as Krishna stated, as those environments, as you're doing 2 backups, 3 backups, 4 backups, and replication, if you can pull that data off and out of that backup stream and put it on less expensive spinning disk, that's a very economical solution. These solutions also, as you scale up and scale out, they do have SSDs on the front end for the metadata management and things like that, but obviously all the actual capacity layer is still spinning disks. So next slide, please, Krishna. And you can go ahead and build this out. This is, we'll get into a little more into the weeds of, what differentiates ActiveScale from, some of the object storage platforms out there. From a high level, if you think of this particular system, think of it as your own private AWS S3. So with the ActiveScale, we have the economics, as I mentioned, the extreme availability and data durability, that's a tongue twister, is built into the system. So we have the ability to go through and use particular technologies like bit spread and erasure coding to make sure that your data is free from corruption, is always accessible. We also, on the upper right corner, data protection and recover, we have the ability to do a single site, a secondary site, or 3 sites. And as you spread across those 3 sites, it's still a single namespace, and you basically geo-spread that data across those sites. We also can do hybrid cloud replication. So if you wanted to have an ActiveScale in your main site and then replicate to AWS S3, we do support that also. When it comes to scalability and efficiency, we have the ability to scale out or scale up depending on the performance you need. And we also have the ability to, as you scale out or scale up, we can non-disruptively, your data will still always be available. So that's, some of our competitors cannot do that. And that's some of, with the algorithms we've written and some of the technologies we have, the data dynamic placement or dynamic data placement is very interesting. And then lastly, and equally as important, is just the ability to manage the system. We have a customer that manages 170 petabytes, and they have a single administrator doing that because it's a single namespace and it's just extremely easy to use. So I want to leave time for questions and not go too deep into the weeds on ActiveScale, but some of the call to actions, I think the most important thing, if you get anything, is Western Digital with Komprise is understand your cold data footprint. We're not telling you to rip out all your NAS, all your flash storage. It's just have a better understanding of what your data is doing in your environment, and that will allow you to more cost effectively and more intelligently manage that data and move it between tiers. Like I said, the object storage system from ActiveScale, we're extremely cost competitive, and everything else is pretty straightforward. But like we said, Krishna, we have proven case studies. It's in production and it works extremely well. We're very happy to be partnered with Komprise on this particular solution. So that's it for me. Anything else, Krishna, to close up?
No, I mean, that's it. And, since a lot of respondents said visibility was one of the issues they were having, we just want to encourage you, if you are thinking about renewing your storage or doing an upgrade to Flash or going to the cloud, or if you have any of those initiatives, please reach out to us, and you can actually, start with that visibility. You can start seeing what's happening with your data and plan more intelligently with our joint solution. And it's really simple. Within minutes, you can start getting analytics on your data.
All right, great presentation.
Perfect.
I love seeing the
Thank
live demo there. We do have some questions for both of you from the audience. Let's see, while we do that, I'm going to pop up this poll question on the screen for the audience. It says, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Western Digital Komprise solution? If so, just select yes, please, and I'll just leave that up there while we do some Q&A. So there's a couple questions here that are basically about, why would I want to do this on premises? What's the benefit of doing this on premises versus doing it, say, in the public cloud? I'll throw that out to either one of you who want to take it.
I'll take the first shot. This is Kurt. So we have customers. It all gets down to compliance and the accessibility to data. And as you push more data to the public cloud, as you push it one direction, that's great. But we all know that as you try to rehydrate that data or bring it back into your environment, you can get hit with high egress fees. So we are absolutely at Western Digital and with Komprise, we do preach the hybrid model, but not all data should be pushed entirely to the cloud. So, that's, from a very high level, I would say that's, a very good opinion, statement.
Okay. And what about deduplication? Stephen's asking if this can help with data deduplication.
So ActiveScale does not, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead, Krishna. You want to take this one?
Sure. So, a big part of the cost of data is the multiple copies of the data. And, it's a deduplication. I don't know exactly what the questioner is asking about, but I'll tell you that when you're looking at primary NAS data that's stored in a NAS environment, a lot of its extra cost is from the DR copy and all the backup copies on that data. And when we're moving that data off the NAS into ActiveScale, we're actually eliminating all those extra copies because ActiveScale is already a resilient storage. And so you don't need all those extra copies of data that is not changing. So there is a significant savings on the multiple copies of the data. As Kurt said, if you're looking at dedupe as, hey, if there are 5 files that have the exact same content, are we, keeping it as one file? No, that we're not doing. But the bulk of the cost is not in that dedupe across files. It's in the many copies of the data, and absolutely the solution eliminates that on your whole data. I don't know, Kurt, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I mean, you pretty much summed it up, Krishna. But, where we see the big savings, and especially with our internal IT department, was the number of copies they had in their backup environment and being able to just push that into a cold tier and not, but it's when it comes to native deduplication, the ActiveScale today does not support deduplication.
Okay. And there's a question here about is Komprise vendor agnostic? Can it work with other solutions besides Western Digital when it comes to analyzing the data?
Yes, of course. Yeah, it is vendor agnostic. I mean, as we showed you in the demo, we were analyzing data across NetApp, EMC, Windows, HDST. I mean, it can be any Hitachi, HDS, any of those environments. Any environment that has NFS, SMB, or S3 interface are environments that we can work across.
Okay, great. And then Richard is asking, can the algorithms that determine what is cold and what is warm or hot, can they be configured?
Yes, of course. You can configure the time ranges you want to look at. Also, because this was a short demo, I couldn't show you all the capabilities, but you can actually search on any subset of the data you want. For example, if you, in a lot of organizations, IT might be operating as a shared service to multiple departments, and maybe for each department you want to show them what the profile of their data looks like. So you can slice the data in many different ways. You can say, look, for the biology department, this is what's happening. For accounting, this is what's happening. Or by type of data. Yes, you can analyze the data based on any of the metadata characteristics, and you can create your own custom queries to look at that data and operate on a subset of the data.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, I think that's all the time we have for our live Q&A. There's a number more technical questions I've assigned to you all that maybe you can get back to in the questions and answers tool there. But a great presentation. Thank you so much, Krishna. Thank you so much, Kurt, for being on the event today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
All right, for more information on the Western Digital and Komprise solution, check out your handouts tab right there, because there is a product brief on how to optimize capacity and lower costs with intelligent data management. So you can just download that PDF by clicking on that link. And with that, it's time to give away our first Amazon $500 gift card on today's event. That is going out to Mike Wegling, W-E-G-L-E-I-N, Wegling, from Maryland. Congratulations, Mike W. from Maryland. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our next presenters on today's Data Management EcoCast. That is Mr. Matt Lloyd, Senior Manager of Global Alliances at Veeam, and Mr. John Nicholson, vSAN Expert at VMware. Matt and John, are you with us?
Yes, happy to be here. This is John.
Likewise, happy to be here, David.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, John. Take it away.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. As David mentioned, I'm Matt Lloyd, Senior Manager for Global Alliances here at Veeam. We're pleased to join this webinar today to tell you a little bit more about working with one of our alliance partners, VMware. And as you heard from Kurt Esser from Western Digital moments ago, Western Digital is also an alliance partner of ours. So you're really getting to see kind of a holistic view in this presentation around the data center, which is why we're happy to join today. But for our focus, we're going to go more towards a VMware-centric conversation. And a lot of you might know, if you have heard of Veeam, that we've been a very close partner with VMware since we were incepted about 10 years ago. So that partnership has evolved and grown over time. We're now considered with VMware a strategic technology partner, which is a unique distinction for a disaster recovery company. Somebody's focused on backup and restore. We're really the only one recognized for that. So I want to highlight a couple of critical areas, and I've asked John Nicholson to join me to talk about vSAN. We'll also talk about vSAN's capabilities around their cloud offering with AWS, called appropriately VMware Cloud and AWS. But before I do that, I would be amiss if I didn't talk about how the backup industry has evolved, and it's part of what's brought Veeam to the limelight and helped us grow to over 300,000 customers today. Customers were looking for more from the backup industry, and what they wanted essentially was an easy way to deploy, an easy way to manage. They wanted something that worked. They wanted something that could help them recover more quickly as the demands on data. And Kurt did a nice job showing that data growth slide. We see that, but as you look at different verticals, they're growing at different rates. If you're looking at the industry that's evolving the quickest in terms of data growth, it's the healthcare industry. When you think about that, it's not shocking. The number of medical technologies that are tying in, that are taking advantage of these patient care capabilities continues to grow. And we're working through our ecosystem on a lot of those opportunities. But that data is a challenge to manage. And the capabilities that were there and solutions that customers invested in may not have the capabilities needed today when as opposed to what the time they were invested in. So what customers have ended up with is trying to manage that on their own has been difficult. So they've gone out and they spent money on professional services. They're having to come in, whether it's in the morning or even in some cases overnight, and talking about failed jobs and attempting to restart those. And the whole problem on waiting for restores. And that's a challenge with the storage as much as it can be with the backup application. So customers are looking for ways to modernize that. So they're seeing costs associated with that, and they want to do something about that. So that that support element is critical. That easy to deploy scenario is marquee. And if you don't believe me, because I'm some random individual on a presentation, I'll bring some names behind that to provide some further evidence to that. Here's some evidence from Gartner, who's back in 2017 forecast that over 50% of organizations will make a change by 2021. And if you're sitting there saying, well, Matt, that's great, that was 2017, how's that changed? they're still expecting that 40%, so only about 10% of companies have made that change according to Gartner. 40% of organizations will make that change from 18 to 2021. So it's still an effort that is being undertaken by organizations as they attempt to modernize their backup. And in some cases, it's been because the backup investment was just not necessarily front line as applications evolved, as capabilities evolved. And as we've gone from a, just a one-to-one sort of ratio on application to server and brought in VMware and other hypervisor technologies to evolve the data center, right? That's changed as well as VMware has made some investments in storage and in the cloud that we'll talk about in a few slides. But why are customers making a change? Essentially, that cost is a factor. Complexity is also as well. And the capabilities is really the marquee area that we see customers want to take advantage of. As we've evolved to look to cloud, especially with considerations around disaster recovery, customers have found it's a great workload to position there. We were just talking about, and I believe it was Kurt who made the point from Western Digital, on how not every workload is suitable for the cloud. I was speaking with a customer. Yes, they do allow me to speak to customers here at Veeam despite my alliance role the other day in the insurance industry. And I'll hold the name because it's an ongoing opportunity. But they were talking about the requirements of their industry puts them in a position where at 9 months they want to shift that data into low-cost storage, and they're looking to the cloud for that. But that's a business model they need to implement just because the amount of records and information they have to store based on legal requirements and other compliance challenges requires them to look at alternative options. So they are augmenting their business model. They're being forced, essentially, to take advantage of new technologies. And that's a difficult thing to do. We're here to help do that. So that capability and complexity is a big factor in conversations that we in Veeam have when we speak to customers. As we shift into Veeam's strategic focus, Veeam's grown up really, and we'll talk about a little bit here that focus on the virtual space. And it started with VMware, but it's evolved. And then we went and we saw that as customers were still looking at that 20 or 10% of their environment that still is physical, that there was a need for us to evolve into that space. So we now have solutions that will help customers as they continue that business transformation from platforming workloads from the physical to the virtual world. And that's on a Windows platform, Linux, Oracle Solaris, and AIX are recent additions to the portfolio. So as a customer, you can see we're looking to help you solve that short-term need or that long-term need potentially on those applications that are remaining on those other platforms. And then, for our cloud offerings, right, whether that's software as a service or it's native cloud, we have offerings in that space as well. Office 365 was a feature we brought in about 1.5 years ago, and we've recently brought in support for OneDrive for Business. As customers were coming to us saying, what you're doing around Office 365 is great, we need to extend that. We've brought that functionality and that capability into our portfolio in the software as a service space. And then, of course, cloud, right? And AWS is there. VMware Cloud AWS's logo is not there, but we are going to talk about that in a couple of slides. But so we talk about how Veeam relates to the market, right? The simple, reliable, and flexible architecture is what has helped us grow at double-digit percentage points in terms of customers year over year. Recently, we just made our results public a couple of days ago. We added almost 50,000 customers in 2018. So if you're out there and you've adopted Veeam or you've taken a look at Veeam, thank you. If you're out there and you're looking at Veeam, you're trying to figure out how to leverage Veeam in your environment, this is an excellent opportunity to do that. And we do that in a way, we get granular around the recovery capabilities. We have some application capabilities that we have. We also have a scalable architecture, and this is an underrated feature of Veeam. We'll talk a little about this momentarily when we talk about vSAN, because it's marquee as how we support vSAN and being able to leverage our architecture to efficiently and effectively reduce the amount of traffic that can go cross-server and make the backup more efficient as you look at software-defined storage technologies like vSAN. And the reliability aspect is important and marquee as well. I talk to customers, and when this data compliance or this regulation compliance, challenge is difficult because there aren't often ways that, other than going out and having an independent audit, that customers can comply with those regulations. There's not an easy guide or an FAQ for complying with Office of the Comptroller or the currency that financial institutions have to comply with. Or we talk about Sarbanes-Oxley or HIPAA or all these other regulations that are driving you all crazy out there in the field. It's a difficult scenario. We've brought some reports in that make that easy, that you can leverage with your audit to help make that more effective around the DR environment. And then that flexibility, right? Being software defined, hardware agnostic, and cloud ready. There have been some solutions in the market that have grown up going back to this in a box sort of philosophy. And what we find is customers certainly want to be in a position where if they have an application that has specific needs, they don't want to invest in different tools. We've expanded our portfolio so that customers can invest in one brand, Veeam, leverage it across their environment as they see fit, as opposed to locking them into different architectures. So if you want to bring in vSAN for a specific use case, you can. And as you evolve and you see the benefits of that, you can do that as well. And we do that in partnership with our customers through the intelligent data management. And you can see we've created these stages for you here, which really, without getting into too much detail here, we want to be a part of this journey with you. We want to help you evolve through these stages so that you can get to that orchestration, having the workload reside in the cloud or on-premises as needed, as well as provide the backup requirements and make that uniform regardless of where the workload resides. You want that to be transient with the workload, and you want to maintain those properties in order to make those compliance requirements easier to comply with, for lack of a better phrase. But ultimately, for all of us, right, that goal, especially around DR, is automation. If we automate that process, we can get to a point where we can focus on that business transformation. And Ratmir Timashev, one of our founders and our executive vice president of sales and marketing, talks quite frequently about how customers are not only looking at how to maintain their data, but also how they can use it to improve their business. We're a partner in that. And you can see from our platform, we do that through a couple of marquee areas. I talked about the monitoring analytics. We do have orchestration capabilities as well to help you monitor, manage, and make sure the backup properties remain regardless of where that workload resides. And there's a feature of ours we call Veeam Data Labs that enables a lot of our advanced restore and data use capabilities. So we don't have many slides around this because we wanted to highlight our partnership with VMware, and I have John. But if you certainly have information or you want to request more information around that, we can provide that to you. And the partnership together really shows how we simplify operations. We went out and did a survey 2 years ago, and we're in the process of refreshing that survey, so look for that shortly. But we found that 75% of customers report that when combining VMware and Veeam together, they enable simpler IT operations. And while that might sound innate, a backup application and a software-defined platform like vSAN, coupled with the variety of technologies that VMware has in networking, cloud, and of course the hypervisor, right? All that together makes sense, but it really shows the value of that partnership and how closely aligned that we are as respective organizations. And the return on that investment is in the RTO and the RPO. The recovery time objectives improve 2 times when we're leveraged together per our customers, and a 10 times improvement in the recovery point objective. Downtime is critical today, and that the ability to recover more quickly and have a more current restore point helps create a more cohesive effort, helps simplify that effort, and together our customers see that value. So John, I want to bring you in here, right, because as we talk about vSAN, one of the capabilities that we have, we certainly tie into a lot of the different capabilities that VMware has around storage. But certainly it's a partnership that has evolved, and we brought that to market very shortly after VMware released this back in March of 2014. I believe by June we had support for vSAN. But it's not just, hey, we support vSAN, you can do a backup. It's more than that.
Yeah, so a little bit of background about myself as I get into this. I actually was both a vSAN and a Veeam customer, so I speak from this not only from the VMware perspective, but from someone who actually cut my teeth on some of the first integrations of this. And what's great with this is, well, obviously there is the VADP backup API. There's lots of things that can hit that. Veeam has really gone above and beyond. They have joined the VMware Ready program with vSAN, which I can talk a little bit more about what that ecosystem means. But they've also done additional integrations. So things like policy-based management integration. So when you're restoring your virtual machine in a traditional environment, you have to find kind of the right place to land that'll deliver the compliance or encryption or performance or availability characteristics. Veeam actually is aware of what those policies are and can basically make sure that that VM gets right back to the same RAID level, performance, VM encrypt, or other settings that are appropriately tagged to that. The other thing with this is from a flexibility of this, Veeam provides a lot of ability not only just to do the backup, but also test the backup on vSAN. So you've got all the capabilities, instant VM recovery, which is fantastic, on being able to get that back on real quick, as well as the ability to not just restore the VM, but also pierce through. The Veeam Explorers provide granularity of being able to look at a file level and search through those indexes, but also at a brick level. So look inside and actually restore just the SQL schema. If you're trying to do a restore in a traditional way where you have to snap an entire VM and then hack it to pieces to get to that data, this is significantly going to slow down your recovery time. And in some cases where applications may have a lot of complications to bring them up or require different orders, being able to use the VM recovery, as well as also some of the Sure Replica and Sure Labs capabilities, being able to test and actually know. If you've got a backup on your vSAN environment and you haven't tested it, you basically have Schrodinger's backup. But being able to rapidly test these backups gives you that confidence to move forward. The other thing also to note here is we kind of have a common goal. Veeam has always strived from working towards making it to where the person managing the VMware environment can also manage the storage environment and can also manage from the storage integrations, but also be the same person who manages the hypervisor. You don't need different teams or silos. And while we do have a broad ecosystem of partners we work with on backup, Veeam was first into that vSAN certified solutions. And since we have a very common goal at HCI, the goal is to make it to where the hypervisor admin, the virtualized network admin, and the storage admin. And we're adding one final piece here: the backup and disaster recovery and business continuity admin is now the same person. And just working from those goals together, this is some, talking to some of the great integrations we've got here. Now going to the next view here, not only are we taking this from the existing, on-premises environment, but also we're looking at the cloud. And so being able to look and take these capabilities and stretch them into VMware Cloud on AWS. Veeam was an initial actual design partner. They were involved from the beginning on this. And so not only do we have this high availability construct, so with vSAN we can build clusters in the cloud, the ability to auto scale, so you don't need to go purchase N+2 or N+3. Hosts just magically appear if there's a failure, so to speak. And also with Elastic DRS, the environment automatically grows. We can also create stretch clusters on VMware Cloud on AWS, so we can actually stretch within different availability zones within a region and provide additional availability. But at the end of the day, a stretch cluster is a great availability solution, but it's not a replacement for true business continuity. That data needs to get out somewhere, and we need to be able to also restore back to point in time to protect from things like CryptoLocker and other things. So vSAN on being able to push a very high availability solution and Veeam be able to rapidly recover that availability or bring that availability elsewhere through mobility or maybe replicate that between regions. This is a powerful combination. This is really a great story together in regards to this.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. And for folks who are out there, looking at how Veeam has been certified with VMware, John talked about the vSAN program as well as VMware Cloud AWS. The VMware Compatibility Guide is the best source of that information. You can certainly see who VMware has tested with, who's achieved those certifications, and what level of their software has been tested. And with VMware Cloud and AWS, a lot of folks don't know, it's upgraded on a quarterly basis. So they have a published public roadmap. You can see that. They do push that information out there. And as a design partner, an ongoing partner here, we have to comply and do testing ongoing, especially as we move from into SDDC version 1.6 here upcoming shortly. So it is something where not only do we have an initial investment, we have an ongoing investment, and you can track that through VMware's website. So I highly encourage you, as you're evaluating solutions, if you're founded on a VMware infrastructure, or if you have a significant portion of infrastructure that is VMware based, it's a great location to check out as you start looking at solutions, regardless of whether they're in the backup and recovery space or elsewhere in order to leverage it in your environment. But here, certainly our goal is to be able to leverage that availability, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. We don't have our own cloud here at Veeam. We let you as the customer choose where you want to place that data. We also have, in addition to the large public cloud providers, a network of service providers who are leveraging Veeam. We have over 20,000 of those. So odds are likely there's a partner out there that's going to fit your requirements as a customer. But we do that via the same license. So if you own Veeam today and you decide that you want to move into VMware Cloud AWS, Our executable will work regardless of where the workload is positioned. So we don't make you acquire a separate product in order to do that. And that was a kind of a foundational element of the design as we move forward with that. And VMware has created a services engagement to help you in that assessment. They've asked me to highlight that here. We've spoken to several of our customers who are looking at moving to VMware Cloud AWS, and they've found these helpful. Partners can help there as well, so certainly don't hesitate to speak to the reseller partner whom you work with for these types of activities. We've worked with a variety of folks out there who are you've certainly achieved the certifications for deploying VMware Cloud AWS and having these conversations. They have to comply with training regulations as well. So if you are looking at cloud migration into VMware Cloud AWS or leveraging it as a secondary data center, this is certainly a way that you can start that assessment, understand your needs, and move towards that. John, was there anything there that you wanted to highlight off that services? I know you've with your vSAN knowledge, you've had to dabble into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if you want to evaluate this, or you even want to evaluate vSAN, reach out to your sales teams. They have tools; they can evaluate your environment. But one last thing I wanted to talk about VMC that I was talking with Matt a little bit before is even if you never use this, what does this matter? And one of the things is this is bringing us closer together with our partners. In the case of Veeam, we're actually doing continuous integration, continuous testing. If you know a little bit about some of these modern development workflows, to where basically as part of the exit criteria, we can't break the backups of this environment. VMC is being continuously upgraded basically underneath. The customer doesn't have to go manage that upgrade, but that also means things have to be forward compatible and things have to be tested before we can just throw code over the fence, so to speak. So even if you never consume this, this is changing how we work with our partners like Veeam to make sure that we work forward together in a system so that you're no longer sitting there stuck on vSphere 4.1 saying, is it safe to upgrade? Will this work with that? We're working to get rid of that anxiety and help you move faster in your data center, no matter where that is or in which cloud that is.
Excellent. Thanks, John. That's great information. I think that factors really nicely in the call to action that we put together. So we didn't plan that, but it worked rather well. So we always like putting you in a position where you can walk away with something in addition to the material that you can download on Veeam and VMware. But if you're certainly looking to improve your SLAs. Around disaster recovery, we see customers challenged by these shrinking backup windows as applications need to be available 24/7, depending on the application, right? Everything has its purpose. Look to leveraging Veeam and VMware together. This partnership has evolved. We're closely aligned around our technologies, and we continue to evolve our relationship to help customers on the VMware platform take advantage of those technologies. And if I can highlight again that the simplicity and the cost that goes together with our two technologies, it certainly helps you not only transform your IT architecture, but channel that savings in time investment or cost savings into transforming the business. We talk to customers who are making huge strides in how they go to market, and one of the ways that they're doing it, if you're a financial services organization and you're in mortgages, you want to reduce the time to approving a mortgage. We've seen that use case. We've seen transportation companies leverage our capabilities so that they can more quickly comply with record compliance. We've seen a variety of use cases. Even a school district. We have a great use case on our website with Clover School District down in the Southwest United States, where they used Veeam and vSAN together for their testing platform, which is certainly has uptime requirements, state compliance, and federal education compliance requirements. That was a great use case we put together and documented. And last but not least, not just on-prem, definitely in the cloud, our strategy alliance between VMware and Veeam. David, with that, I believe we want to answer some questions, or do we want to get to the giveaway? I've seen some traffic on the questioning tool that they're excited for dollars.
Let's do some questions, and then we'll do a prize giveaway. And while I ask you those questions, I'm going to pop up this poll question for the audience out there. It says, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Veeam solution? I'll just leave that up there. So let's see, first question that came in, they're asking about, how does Veeam's integration with vSAN differ from other backup products?
A great question. So our architecture is unique, allowing you to adapt it to the environment that it's in. And with VMware, specifically around vSAN, our proxy placement, where the bulk of the backup activity takes place, can be structured so that you can pin those to the individual vSAN hosts and reduce that cross traffic, which, as you move to more of a software-defined platform, can cause some challenges depending upon how often or frequently you need to take a backup. So we have worked together in collaboration with VMware based on our flexible architecture to make that as efficient as possible. We call that smart logic, essentially leveraging our integration with VMware via their APIs to sense where that data is or where the bulk of it is, choosing that efficient pathway, and then making the backup as efficient in terms of resource utilization as possible.
Okay. So maybe this is. Oh, go ahead, John.
Yeah, the other integration I'd like to talk about is Veeam's really gone above and beyond and actually done SPVM integration, which I haven't really seen anywhere else, and they've had this for a while. If you search YouTube, Veeam and VMware vSAN recovery with SPVM integration, you'll find a short video I put together where I actually show what this process looks like.
Okay, very nice.
Great point, John. I had it on the slide. I forgot to mention it. Great point.
Maybe this is a question for you, John. At the start of the event, we had a poll where people talked about their greatest data management challenges, and the number one challenge that people were facing was around security and compliance. How can vSAN help companies with security and compliance, concerns around their data?
So I was actually just at a hospital yesterday having this discussion. We've got a couple of options that we provide, and not only do we enable encryption and compliance, but we actually make it easy. So with vSAN, we actually support the ability to encrypt vSAN as a whole, and there's native vSAN encryption. What's unique about that is that supports existing external key management, but also it doesn't break the deduplication or compression cycles of that. So for people who have that compliance checkbox, they've got to do that. Our VADP APIs actually have, for the network-based mode, there is an SSL basically option you can check within Veeam. And so that way the backup data, when it's in transport, will be encrypted coming out. So if you have encryption of flight requirements, Veeam also supports encryption on its end. So collectively, we enable you to encrypt that IO path end to end. Now, if you're also taking this a step beyond and you're not just worried about someone walking out with some hard drives, you're worried about that guy walking out with the thumb drive, check out Veeam Encrypt. And that's actually set by SPVM policy, which is great. So when you go recover that, because of Veeam's SPVM integration, they will make sure it stays encrypted after it's recovered. And so that way you don't end up accidentally leaking or exposing data because you recovered it in an unencrypted state.
Okay, very nice. And then along the same questions around security, Matt, maybe this question's for you. How does Veeam protect against a malware attack?
A great question. So recently with our most current release, which is 9.5 Update 4 for backup and replication, we brought in compatibility with several security vendors, partners out there. There are 4 actually that we're working with out of the box. We're attempting to broaden that ecosystem, but we wanted to make sure we brought this to market because customers with ransomware attacks have challenges. And we've enabled the ability to scan a backup file for malware. So this is it's a great feature we call Secure Restore. So for customers, you can essentially make sure you can go to a recent restore point, solve your malware issues, and then restore from that backup file. It was something our customers have asked us for as we've gone out and we've surveyed customers on what additional features Veeam could bring in that would be helpful, and we're pleased to have that in the market now.
Excellent, excellent. And then another question here. I know we talked about VMware Cloud on AWS, but this person's asking, does Veeam support multiple cloud providers?
Yes, we do. So if you, in your example, if you want to go into VMware Cloud and AWS and then also push data into any one of the variety of Amazon offerings, right? We do have the ability to work through some of those capabilities. So certainly, for us, there are some dependencies there. So we want to talk about it on a more of a case-by-case basis and understand what you're attempting to do, how you're looking to restore your environment, where you're looking to position that data. But we do have the ability to do multi-cloud. We've run into a couple of use cases where customers want to leverage VMware Cloud AWS for a secondary data center, and then potentially do an offload backup to a local or regional provider. We can do that as well.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think that's all the time we have for the live Q&A. There's a few more technical questions there for you in the queue, but a great presentation. Thanks for being on the event today, John and Matt.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, David.
All right, for more information on the VMware and Veeam solution, make sure you check out the handout that's available for download right there in your console. It covers availability and risk avoidance for VMware vSAN. And with that, it is time to give away another Amazon $500 gift card to one lucky winner. The next winner on the list today is Josh Rhodes from Kansas. Congratulations, Josh from Kansas. We've got another $500 gift card to give away later in the event, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenters on today's Data Management EcoCast. That is Mr. Andy Ferris, Product Manager at Igneous, and David Clements, Information Systems Leader. Andy and David, are you with me?
Yes, we are here.
Hi.
Awesome. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Thanks for having us on today. So what Igneous does is we are focused on helping our customers manage unstructured data, and we deliver that as a service. So what does that mean? So unstructured data is your file and your object data within your environment, and it's typically the hardest data to manage. And what we'll provide is data visibility, data mobility, and protection for that data. So we're talking about these are environments that can consist of billions of files and petabytes of data. You may have thousands of different exports or shares within your environments or different buckets. And those shares or exports might consist of a variety of different small and large files all mixed together within the environment. And so this is really one of the hardest problems to solve within your environment, especially at scale. So as an example, when you look at just data protection, typically what we see in environments is people are using multiple solutions, and they usually are kind of locked in by different vendor-specific silos for tools like data replication between locations. They may have also have some backup servers that they're then backing up data to disk-based solutions like data domain or quantum solutions, or off to tape and off-site. And then they'll have multiple NAS providers. So this creates really a lot of different silos, very poor visibility into what's being protected and what's not, and where the policies reside. They can have very long or extended backup windows. They can be dependent on technologies like NDMP, which are fairly single-threaded. And these workloads could be, quite frankly, the largest workloads on those primary systems. All of this equates to a very expensive cost as you're replicating primary systems onto other locations, you know, at pretty much very close to the same cost as your primary systems. So what we're trying to do is kind of make sure you have the ability to tie together your visibility, your mobility, and your protection in one tool set. And so when you look at what's out there today, you'll see that there's a variety of different disk vendors that are providing solutions. Those solutions are probably not the most efficient when you talk about costs associated with that. The cloud integration could be just very kind of poor and very singularly focused. The searchability of the data is low if they're providing any kind of tools at all to be able to search within the files and directories within the system. And it creates a vendor-specific lock-in. There's also the backup and archive vendors that do work in the heterogeneous environments. But they're not really built for the scale that we're talking about that happens today. Jobs that used to be done on a daily basis are now being done on a weekly basis just because there's just not enough time in a day to complete them. And when those jobs start to extend past that time frame, they have to go back to the disk vendors to get that job to finish. And then you could also have open source tools for moving your data from place to place. And that's, that works also well in a heterogeneous environment, and some of them are free, but they're not automated, and they need a lot of monitoring, and there's no really audit process in there, so it consists of a lot of babysitting to ensure those jobs get done on time. And so for us, what we're trying to do is tie in visibility, mobility, and protection into one solution. So for visibility, you'll no longer have these single point solutions with manual processes and very slow scanning applications, right? So some of these applications out there, for basically just for a petabyte, it could take literally months to finish a single scanning process to get the information that you'd like out of your systems. Mobility products are either expensive single point kind of solutions, or they're open source systems that there's no real active management to, or no auditing or no monitoring solutions for. And then data protection tends to be vendor specific, depending on NDMP, and are very resource intense processes within your storage. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this over to Andy so he can describe Igneous's way of helping you manage and handle these problems.
Thanks, David. So this is Andy Ferris. I'm a product manager here at Igneous. So I'm going to walk you through how we try to solve some of these problems around visibility, mobility, and protection. Let's see. Sorry. Go ahead and David, can you advance the slide for me?
Yeah.
So what you see here is an overview of what Igneous offers. Well, really what we're offering is unstructured data management as a service, anywhere your data lives, for everyone in your organization, and at scale, the scale of enterprise, which typically means billions of files and petabytes of data. And we're going to do that through our three primary products. Data Discover is providing you the ability to scan and understand your entire unstructured environment and analyze that data so you can determine trends and determine which management strategies you need to enable. Data Flow, which is built around mobility, building data pipelines to move data from where it's generated to where it needs to be consumed. And then Data Protection, which is all about backup and archive and recovery of your data. And all of these things, again, are focused on data at scale. So digging in a little bit into the architecture, really what we're doing is three primary things. We're scanning, indexing, and moving your unstructured data. Like I mentioned, we're going to do this anywhere your data lives, whether that's on a primary NAS system on-prem, or if that's in your public cloud providers. We're optimized all of these operations for unstructured data, and we've delivered it all of it as a service in order to minimize the management overhead and simplify the implementation of these services. So really what we're trying to do is we scan faster than flash. So when you have billions of files and petabytes of data, the ability to go scan this stuff as quickly as possible is crucial. If you're generating data faster than your management platform can scan it, then you've got an unwieldy situation and you're going to be quickly overextending yourself and unable to keep up with that growth. As part of that, you need to develop a global metadata index that allows you to find, locate, and manage all of your data, regardless of where it's generated or where it's currently stored. And then built into all of this is data movement. So that's when you're talking about unstructured data, you're talking about small files, large files, complicated file trees, and you need to be able to go move that data extremely quickly, whether that's for protection or mobility. So let's dig in a little bit around our scale. So how we manage these scales for billions of files and petabytes of data is a couple of different ways. We've spent a lot of time building our data movement platform. And so we do all of these operations multi-threaded and highly parallelized and latency aware. And that latency aware aspect is extremely critical when you're talking about primary workloads, because the last thing you want to do is have your data management platform impact your end users and their critical work that they're doing on your primary systems. So that allows us to go move this data extremely quickly, but without seeing any impact to end users. So we'll dial our operations up or down depending on the resources available on your primary systems. And we do all of this stuff automatically. So there's no management overhead that's required by your IT infrastructure, and there's no active management going on to manage the latency from Igneous. This all happens programmatically. We're going to do this for all of our products, the first of which is Data Discover. Data Discover is our visibility platform. It's going to provide you a single view of all of your unstructured data throughout your enterprise. So what we're going to go do is we're going to go scan every single one of your unstructured storage platforms, and we're going to collect that metadata into a single index. That single index, we're going to do this extremely quickly, typically on the scales of allowing you to do petabyte environments on a nightly basis. And then we're going to go allow you to query that data to understand what type of trends are happening there, whether it's around growth or cold data sets that would be candidates for archive, and really give you that visibility into what's happening on your primary systems. This allows you to answer all of those common questions and help you develop your data management strategies and pair that with a powerful archive engine, which we'll talk about here in a bit. The next product that we should dig into is called Data Flow. Data Flow is all about enabling data movement, and it's the ability to set up data pipelines on an automated and API-driven fashion so that you can move data from where it's generated programmatically to where it needs to be consumed, likely on a high-performance primary NAS system that's connected into your HPC clusters, and do all of this stuff in an automated way to handle the scale that these ML and AI workloads require these days. And then the final product that we should talk about here is around Igneous protection. So this is what most people will typically associate with Igneous if they've heard of us before. This is Igneous Data Protect is around two use cases. The first one is backup. Backup is an incredibly critical aspect of data management. And our platform is going to allow you to handle that again at scale. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a level 0 backup, and then we're going to do an incremental forever after that. This allows you to minimize your storage footprint for Igneous as well as in the cloud, and we're going to allow you to replicate that data to the public cloud. So this is going to be able to keep up with even the most aggressive growth structures in your primary environment, as well as take advantage of the cost and advantages of the public cloud by streaming this stuff directly to the public cloud. When it comes to restore, you can have a search-driven restore so that regardless of when that file was generated, we're going to be able to go scan and show you every version of that file that we have, regardless of if it lives now on-prem or in the cloud, and allow you to initiate that restore directly back to that primary NAS system or any other NAS system you have in your environment. This is going to be driven by your storage admins as well as end users to enable this restore process. And we're going to do this with API integration with all of your primary NAS vendors out there, whether they're Isilons, NetApp, Cumulo, Pure FlashBlade, et cetera. So the API integration really gives you a number of advantages. This simplifies the provisioning of backup users, snapshotting, and a bunch of other things that make setting up these workloads extremely easy. And then we're going to go do all of this stuff as we're going to go do these backups based off of policies which allow you to take advantage of our scalability. So you don't have to go set up each individual job on every single individual data set. You're just going to go assign a policy, set it, and then Igneous, with our as a service delivery, is going to ensure that those backups complete on time and within your SLAs. And now moving on to our final use case here, which is still under the Data Protect family. This is all around Igneous Archive. So what we've set up here is a platform that allows you to constrain your growth on primary systems, which is what Archive is all about. Data Protect and our archive workflow is going to allow you to integrate again with any primary system. We are storage agnostic. So wherever these data sets live, we can go find these and initiate an archive to whether, again, you want to store the stuff on-prem with Igneous or if you want to store this stuff directly in the public cloud. We're going to keep track of where that data came from, and we're going to keep track of where that data is currently stored, and then we're going to automate all of this movement. This is going to be project-based, so you're going to go grab, your large directories that are all ready for archive, and you're going to go push this stuff directly to the public cloud, and we're going to keep track of all of it for you. Make it really simple to go get this data back again when you need to retrieve it, and make sure that you are constraining that growth on your primary system and making sure that only your active workloads are being consumed on your primary systems. And then we're also going to grant you, not just through our typical restore workflow, our IT-driven restore workflow, but we're also going to grant your end users direct access to that data via read-only NFS on Igneous, so that while your end users might be hesitant to adopt any archive workflow, they will still have direct access to this data. So that's the Igneous Archive data set, or Igneous Archive platform. The last thing I want to talk about is, again, all of this stuff is delivered as a service. In any modern environment, you're going to hear a lot about, as a service delivery, and here's what this means to Igneous. We're going to go auto provision and monitor everything remotely, which means that we are going to keep track of every task that happens. We're going to keep track of the health of your system, and we're going to make sure that everything is functioning properly and as it should. So this is not just a product that's delivered. This is a complete service. We're going to do proactive failure management. So whether that's hardware or software issues that come up, failures are inevitable in any IT environment. So we're going to be proactively monitoring this stuff. Typically what happens is you see we will find these issues and be triaging it well before any end user or customer of ours is noticing any issue. So we're going to be actively seeking to resolve problems as they come up. We're going to be automating upgrades. So every week we push out new updates to our platform. So users just log on and they see new features and functionality, and there's no downtime on your system. We're doing these non-disruptive upgrades, fairly consistently, without any intervention from our customers. And then the last thing is, we have service-oriented teams. So we built in automated monitoring into the platform. So any issues that come up, they immediately notify our teams in here to take action, and we're available to respond to customer issues, whether it's something that we notice or customer notices, basically 24/7. So I think that's about all I have for our prepared remarks. Can we move into questions here?
Absolutely. Yeah, great presentation. So while we do some Q&A, I'm going to pop up this question for the audience out there on the screen. It says, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Igneous solution? I'd appreciate everyone responding to that. So let's see, first question that came in, Dean is asking, can I use Igneous with AWS?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are integrated with every public cloud provider out there, so we can push data. We have no problem pushing data to Amazon, Google, or Azure, and we can do that to any tier, whether that's their hot, cool, or archive tiers of those public cloud vendors. Okay. And when you say Igneous is delivered as a service, does that mean there's nothing to install on premises, or how does that work? No, so that means that the Igneous is going to handle the installation of all of our services. So the way that it works right now is we will handle, we do have a hardware component that gets installed on-prem today, and we will handle the installation of that hardware, and we're going to handle the software deployment to that hardware. But there is an installation aspect on-prem with the Igneous services. Okay.
But one of the key things to understand is that it's delivered as a service is this is down to each job that's run in our application, right? So if you're actually starting or running a job, we're going to manage and monitor that job to its completion and ensure that that job will finish if there's any failure points within that activity, or notify you if there's failure points within your environment that are limiting our ability to finish those jobs. So it's a very much at a very high level end-to-end service against the solution.
Okay, excellent. And then Richard here, he's asking, what are basically the network requirements? Do you need a MPLS or express route connection? What's needed on that front?
So depending on the network connectivity will affect the amount of data that needs to move. So the real answer to that is the more data you need, obviously you need a larger pipe to be able to handle that within a reasonable time period. But what we will do is be able to move that data at line rate. So if you've got a direct connect, multiple 10 gig pipe to AWS, we can fill that pipe with your data if necessary, or if you're running a smaller pipe and your restore process is coming out of an archive tier, and so this process might take some time to finish, we're going to manage it all the way through to fruition and make sure that that job's complete for you. So it depends on the volume of data that you need to move and the timelines you're shooting for, how big that pipe should be.
Okay. And kind of what's the time frame if someone said, hey, I want to get Igneous up and running? Can you kind of walk us through the time frame and the process?
Certainly. If somebody is interested in acquiring our application, then we would go through the process of delivering that hardware. That typically can take about about 2 weeks to land the hardware there. Once the hardware's land, then we come on site. We do base level install, and once that's done, that typically just takes 1 day. All of our packages get downloaded, and the solution is ready for jobs within that day. So the long haul in that is just landing that initial hardware.
Okay. And then what's the kind of the pricing model for the Igneous solution?
The pricing is based on terabytes under management. So typically, what we'll do is take a look at your environment, and you'll determine how much of the unstructured data you have and how much of that you would like to have under management, and then that establishes the price for you going forward.
Okay. And I know you talked about, AI and ML. How does that, can you kind of summarize, how does that benefit, companies that are leveraging Igneous?
So AI ML workloads can be iterative type workloads where you have different varieties of data samples that you're running experiments against. And this could be similar to other types of environments like research environments as well. And typically you'll have a high performance compute platform that's dedicated to working on those different sample sets. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll act as a repository of record for all of that data, and then you can use and automate the same automated or scheduling tools you're using within your HPC to do an API call to us for the specific types of data sets that you want to run your experiment on. And will be the process that's used to efficiently move that data on and off the platform for you. So you don't have to purchase a platform that has the capacity to handle 100% of all your data sets, because typically the high performance compute platform is very expensive.
Okay. And
so you can think of us kind of as a GitHub for that data.
Okay, I like that analogy. Yeah. And I know you talked about Igneous, backup and data protection. Does Igneous replace an existing data protection solution?
Yeah, that's the way that you get the cost savings is you look at all of the different kinds of solutions that you may be using today, which might consist of backup software applications. It may consist of storage-based replication solutions. It may consist of secondary disk, deduplication disk, or tape solutions, and then cloud solutions. So we can sit there and replace all of that end-to-end solution from application to target, of where you're putting that data.
Nice, nice. And so probably the last question we have time for is, how should people get started? I mean, what do you recommend? Is there a POC they do, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the best way to get started, of course, is just to reach out to us and let us get a basic understanding of what your needs are with your environment. Typically what we'll do is we'll target the most difficult problem you have. Once we've proved ourselves with that very difficult problem, that's when we see people pretty much open up the doors and run, a much larger footprint, and we start to handle their entire environment.
Okay, excellent. Well, great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information on the Igneous solution, check out your handout tab right there, and you can download the Igneous handout. It's entitled Igneous Unstructured Data Management as a Service, and it talks in more detail about the Igneous solution and how it can help you with your data management struggles. And with that, it's time to introduce our next presenter on today's Data Management EcoCast. That is Chris Meyer, VP of Product Management at Infinite.io. Chris, are you with me?
I am. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Take it away.
All right. So, as mentioned, I'm Chris Meyer. I'm VP of Product for Infinite.io. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to attend the meeting and learn a little bit more about Infinite.io and what we do. Let's get started. All right, so a little background on the company. We're privately funded. We've been around since 2014. really founded on the principles of enabling cost-effective hybrid cloud storage without the complexity or performance bottlenecks that plagued many of the legacy solutions. And I think we've got a pretty interesting solution here. So our team comes out of network security, and so they've taken a really novel approach in our enabling technology that I hope I'll get into later, and I hope you get out of this discussion. You can see we've got plenty of partners and customers, and including partners that have already presented here today. All right, so let's talk about what we do. Our goal here is really to make hybrid cloud storage simple and fast. So what we have is an appliance-based solution that installs non-disruptively in front of your customer's NAS boxes. We learn the hot files and their associated metadata, and we begin responding to metadata requests on behalf of the NAS behind us. So we are essentially offloading the filer from the burden of serving all of this metadata. So we serve the metadata request from the network, comes out of DRAM in tens of microsecond latency, and I'll touch on this a little bit in a few more slides. We found generally that 70 to 90% of file operations are really metadata operations, right? So operations on the data about the data. Who has access to a file, when was the file created, show me a list of files in a folder or directory. So these are really common operations. And so we're taking these operations and we're offloading them and we're accelerating them from the NAS behind us. And of course, this has been touched on I think a couple of times already. Once we offload all of these operations, the NAS box behind us becomes more efficient, more performant for reads and writes, as again, we're offloading 70 to 90% of the operations that it's supporting. So all of that's fine, but what about the hybrid cloud storage part, right? Well, we learn active files. We also learn inactive files too. So we learn your inactive files, and then we allow customers to transparently tier them to more cost-effective storage, like object storage is an obvious choice, but we also will tier to cheaper NAS storage if you prefer. So key here is the files continue to look local to the clients and the application, regardless of whether they've been migrated or not. So there's absolutely zero disruption to clients, workloads, applications. Of course, we're freeing up prime tier 1 storage space and filling up object storage with this inactive data, and that's right where this data belongs, right? It needs to be moved to the most cost-effective storage possible for it, right? And enabling the IT guys to take advantage of the right cost model for their data. So again, we do this transparently. There's zero disruption. There's no stubs. There's no infrastructure. Infrastructure changes. No special drivers or special mounts. There's no continuous scans of the infrastructure looking for inactive files. No VM sprawl. You just drop Infinite I/O in and get the benefits of metadata acceleration and transparent tiering. It's just simple and fast. So let's talk about how we do this, the how part. So our key enabling technology is something called deep packet inspection. So a little team history here. Our engineering team worked at a company called Tipping Point prior to Infinite I/O. There they developed intrusion prevention systems. And these IPS systems used this deep packet inspection to look into each TCP packet. Essentially, TCP packets would flow by, they'd crack open the packets, they'd look for intruders. If they found an intruder signature, they could quarantine the TCP flows. Deep packet inspection is commonly used, commonly known industry-wide for this. So what we did, though, is we applied this technology to storage. So now we crack every NFS packet in real time. We learn the metadata for active files. We accelerate operations and essentially abstract the metadata from file location. So this really enables metadata acceleration and offload, real-time analytics, we'll see a little bit later, and transparent tiering of files. Right? Clients and applications, they have no idea other than metadata operations are speeding up. There's no change to the workflow. So the Infinite I/O solution is based on a shared nothing cluster architecture. It's redundant everything, providing enterprise resiliency. There's no single point of failure. As I mentioned, it drops in like a layer 2 network switch, immediately starts looking at NFS tracking every packet, learning the metadata for all the active files, and responding to metadata requests on behalf of the storage behind us. Well, then we kick off a one-time scan. So we grab the metadata for all of the files behind us. So now we can serve metadata for any file. Essentially, all files are hot now. And then we allow customers to transparently tier their inactive files to object storage. Right? So now, since we have all the file metadata, we allow storage admin to create simple or complex policies and really define what inactive or cold data means to their infrastructure or to their group. So as you would expect, all file attributes are available for use as part of policy definition. And I like to think of policies as either time-based or project-based. So time-based are the obvious ones, right? Migrate all files that have not been accessed in the last 180 days. That's a pretty straightforward, simple policy. Additional policies like project-based policies, I think of these as more of policies by path or directory structure. So consider, I'm an EDA shop and I taped out my chip and I've got all these artifacts that can be migrated because I'm not going to need them any longer. So why would I want to wait and have them, age out to be migrated? You can simply create a policy that where you list the directories that you're interested in moving, and you can immediately kick it off and move those files at once. We also support regex commands. It's super flexible in defining policies. And of course, we support exceptions, right? So you can, migrate all files that haven't been accessed in 180 days, but don't migrate files in this directory or by this owned by this person or group. It is complete flexibility here. Of course, you can create multiple policies. They can be simple or complicated. They can even be based on, an individual business unit's policy. It can be assigned for export or share or whole filers. We provide, again, lots of flexibility in this regard. So once your policy or policies are created, you can immediately execute the policies to match inactive files and start moving them to object storage. Or by default, we'll run migrations at midnight, right? Note, there's never a need to rescan to pick up metadata changes like last access time, for example. We always have the current metadata for all files in memory. Policy is simply matching against what we have in memory. All migrated files continue to look local to clients, regardless of whether or not they've been migrated. So to reiterate, we're only offloading metadata requests. All reads and writes are serviced by the NAS box itself. So a read or write request for a local file to the NAS behind us, it comes in, we recognize the request, and we just let it pass through to the NAS for service. In the case of writes, the NAS provides updated metadata on its final response. And via deep packet inspection, we simply grab the metadata and update our view. So we're always keeping a current copy of metadata consistent with the storage behind us. But that does beg the question of what about the data that's been migrated? So what happens here is during a read or write request for data that's been migrated, we'll just simply bring that data back from the cloud, wherever we migrated it to, we'll put it back on the original NAS box in its original location, and the NAS box services the request directly for the client. Client has no idea that any of this is going on in the background. It just knows that its data shows up. And we can do all this without any capacity-based pricing. So whether you're moving 500 terabytes or 2.5 petabytes, it's the same cost, right? Buy an appliance once and manage as much data as you want or need to. So again, we install non-disruptively. There's no changes to clients. There's no software to install or special mounts to create. We don't stub or use any dynamic links. We abstract the file metadata. That's key, right? Deep packet inspection and being able to abstract that metadata. We don't need to do continued scans of the storage behind us. We just transparently migrate inactive files and bring them back on demand. Of course, we do this super fast, right? So we serve metadata requests at under 100 microseconds. Here I'm showing 77. Certainly seen that before. We do this regardless of location, right? So key is the file could be migrated or it could be local. We make the performance of both of those, the metadata performance for both of those files really as fast as flash systems, right? Regardless of location. Also, we're protecting the migrated files from recall. So in some solutions, metadata operations to a migrated file will trigger, at best, a round trip to the cloud to go grab metadata for the associated file. Or at worst, it's a recall of the whole file. Since we're serving the metadata directly, we eliminate this trip. So in effect, Infinite I/O is eliminating all egress charges and keeping performance the same between local and migrated files for 70 to 90% of typical storage operations. So as an aside to this, the original point of offloading metadata was really to protect migrated files from recall. It turns out that this is really a key requirement for true hybrid cloud storage, right? This ability to equalize the performance, accelerate the performance between on-prem primary storage and files that you've migrated to cloud. So another interesting aside. So we've already mentioned backup and the benefits of moving inactive data off of primary storage and the positive effects that has on your shrinking your backup window, et cetera. So we have a customer actually that after installing us, they realized that their backups were running about 30 to 40% faster. And this was prior to actually doing any tiering on our part or migration of data. So what we found after digging in and working with the customer, we found that there were a surprising number of metadata operations in the backup application. So they're going out and checking on the age of files and trying to figure out what to go back up. And so we were absorbing all of those. And so, we improved the performance and provided the visibility to what was going on via our real-time analytics. So this was just sort of an interesting and unexpected result from one of our installations. All right. So this is a snapshot of our dashboard. As you would expect, dashboard is designed such that you get a quick overview of system health. We'll show you some real-time performance graphs as well as savings. So here we have a simple overview of a few key metrics, CPU utilization of the box, the percent of NFS operations we're offloading, and overall network performance. We'll show you a graph of latency, really a measure of the time it took from when we received a request to when we responded, and we graph the total number of NFS calls per second. On this particular system, there's clearly not much traffic, but we are offloading 87% of it from the storage behind us and responding with a latency of around 50 microseconds. All of these are graphed in real time. Of course, this is another artifact of deep packet inspection. And we've got a whole section of the product displaying more detailed performance graphs. As hinted in my previous slide and comments, one of these is a real-time graph of NFS operations by type, right? That lets you sort of drill into what's really going on in your storage infrastructure. So here you can also see we have a graph of the last access times for the files behind us. This gives you a quick overview of how inactive your data set is. In this case, you can see the majority of my storage, the majority of the storage, my data set hasn't been accessed in over 2 years. We also show in aggregate how much space Infinite IO saved you by moving inactive data to a more cost-effective tier, and in aggregate how much free space is behind us. So to reiterate, a lot of this stuff no one else can do. This deep packet inspection is a fundamental engineering design that brings these real-time insights that only we can deliver. And finally, I thought I'd end on a real-world deployment of ours. So this is an actual installation of ours. Our customer has about 3.5 petabytes of NetApp, over 1 billion files. I think it's closer to 1.5 billion files in their infrastructure. They have 15 years of genomic research data present. They believe that much of it is cold, but it still has to be accessible by the researchers, right, without any sort of admin intervention. And these systems are, chronically 90% full, hard to manage. Key issue here for this particular customer is metadata performance. So they've tried other solutions to tier, their find and tier their inactive data, and what they found is that they couldn't keep up with the metadata performance requirements. That there's millions of small files and directories, and there's thousands of scientists that are actively using the system, and that was a key criteria for them. So what they did is they dropped in a single 3-node Infinite IO cluster. Again, it went in non-disruptively. None of the researchers or scientists had any idea that we were installed. We immediately started offloading the data. Metadata operations started being accelerated, and then we kicked off that one-time scan that I talked about earlier. So when the scan was completed, we found that a full 75% of their storage was inactive. And by inactive to them means it has not been that file hasn't been accessed in the last 180 days. So we immediately identified 2.5 petabytes of data that we can transfer to our partner, who also presented earlier, Western Digital, and help our customer out. One other thing to note here is I had the ability to log into their system a couple of weeks ago to see just how things were functioning, and lo and behold, a full 85% of their network traffic was metadata traffic, and we were offloading that from their system behind us. One final note before I close out. So I just wanted to say that we have just launched our new website here in the last week. Go to infinite.io to check it out, please. And then look there for in the coming next couple of weeks, we're going to have a free storage assessment, hybrid cloud storage assessment tool available for you to download. With that, I think this is my last slide.
Yeah, great presentation, Chris. Really, really innovative stuff there you're doing with deep packet inspection. We do have some questions for you from the audience, and while I ask you those, I'm going to pop up this poll question. So everyone out there in the audience, I want to draw your attention to the slides window. It says, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Infinite IO solution? And if so, just say yes, please, right there. So let's see, first question that came in, they're asking, Richard's asking about the switch installation. Is it, what sort of redundancies or high availability is available for that? What kind of options do you recommend?
Yeah, so we support redundant switches. So essentially everything is redundant in the solution. No single point of failure.
Okay. And in terms of the solution itself, is it hardware and software? Is it the switch plus software, or what are the different?
Yeah, so ultimately we're a software company, but the total solution is an appliance. So typical installation is 2 network switches and a 3-node cluster.
Okay. And then another question here from Richard. He's asking about metadata. Does the metadata contain permissions on the files, and if so, how do you handle that?
Absolutely. So file permissions are an important part of it, right? So reads and writes. Remember, all of those are handled by the NAS box itself. So there's no permissions issues whatsoever.
Okay, nice. And then once you have access to this metadata, what kind of insight can a company really gain from that?
Sure, we can show you hot files and cold files, and particularly with deep packet inspection, we have the ability to show you who's accessing what files and where and when. We can show you things like top consumers. There's no end to the insight that we can provide.
Okay, and what kind of change does the Infinite I/O solution really make on the infrastructure? What kind of impact, once the switch is in, what's the most immediate visible result?
Yeah, so we're invisible, right? So we're invisible to clients, we're invisible to the filers behind us. So there is no impact on your infrastructure. The only thing that you'll see is, once we're installed and we're tiering and offloading the metadata, you'll notice that things run faster because we're serving metadata at 10 to 50 times faster than the storage behind us can. And then you'll notice that the storage behind us will become more efficient because we're tiering files off of it, and B, we're offloading 70 to 90% of the operations that it was serving.
Okay. Let's see. Dean just commented he'd love to see the GUI for the deep packet inspection output. So if so, I recommend that you check yes, please on the poll that's on the screen there. And I'm sure that the folks at Infinite I/O would love to give you a demo of that. Dean is asking, is there any screenshots available on the website of the GUI?
Yeah, we can put some up. We also have a YouTube channel where I walk through creating policies and walk through our dashboard, and you can certainly see more examples of it there. Okay.
Nice. And then another question here about what if a company has a few petabytes of data? They have tons of data, and like you said, if 80% of that is cold, how much capacity can you really tier with this solution?
There's no really limit on the capacity from our standpoint, right? The size of the data doesn't matter.
Okay. Nice. So what's the first step typically? Do people do a proof of concept? What do you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So come reach out to us. Reach out to me direct, or sign up on our website, and we'll be happy to set up a POC. So, and again, to reiterate, back to your capacity question. So whether you're trying to move, managing 100 terabytes or 50 petabytes, we don't care. We don't have any capacity-based pricing. It doesn't matter to us.
Okay. And here's another question that just came in. Lee's asking, do you have any recommendations on where the solution, helps the most, meaning files or databases or specific applications?
Yeah, certainly files. So discovering files, moving inactive files is, the tiering aspect of it. Again, the surprising, a bit surprising aspect is the metadata performance. So if you have heavy metadata performance applications, we can help there too. So what we found is typically in media and entertainment and EDA shops that they're very metadata heavy, and we can we can help them tremendously in their workflows, speeding up their workflows.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, Chris, I think that's all the time we have for our live Q&A session, but a really innovative solution. Thanks so much for being on the EcoCast today.
Hey, thank you very much.
For more information on the Infinite.io solution, make sure you check out their website, infinite.io.com. Also, download the handout that's available right there in your audience console. It's a white paper entitled Multi-Cloud File Storage Design Considerations. So you might want to check that out and read that for more information. I also want to call attention to a poll question that's on the screen right now. That is, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting new data management solutions? I'll just leave that up while I announce our final prize winner on today's event. The final prize is an Amazon $500 gift card, and that is going out to Kai Nguyen, K-Y-N-G-U-Y-E-N from California. Congratulations, Kai. Also, congratulations to Mike and Josh, our other two prize winners on today's event. If you didn't win a prize, no worries. We've got a lot of upcoming events with even bigger prizes. So you can visit events.actualtechmedia.com to learn more about those. In fact, I'll put that website up on the screen right now. We've got a lot of upcoming MegaCast and EcoCast and other events. You can go register for those at events.actualtechmedia.com. In fact, our next event is on March 6th. That's the secondary storage EcoCast event, so make sure that you stay tuned. Watch your email inbox for an invite to that. And if you don't get one, go visit the event's website. If you're a potential sponsor of an ActualTech Media event, feel free to reach out to us at sales@actualtechmedia.com, and we'd love to chat with you about how you might want to present on one of our upcoming events. And with that, we've reached the end of today's Data Management EcoCast. I want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's event. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you really enjoyed the event, and I look forward to seeing you on the next